Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes, that we're ready to go. Good day, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, regarding what part of the city, the state, the world you happen to be hailing from. I want to welcome you to our session this evening. I'm Trisha Griffin-Carty, and I am just delighted to be working with you, particularly on this topic. And I have a personal interest in this because, as Anne mentioned, I started my first career as a high school English teacher. And then there were a lot of twists and turns before I wound up doing what I was doing, what I do now. But I do remember that first transition, people would ask me to tell me about myself. And I just found it so challenging, and especially because I wasn't looking to do another teaching job. So that was a painful experience. And then I began to learn a few tips that I'm going to share with you this evening, and hope that you will find them helpful as well. So you know a little bit about me. I know a little bit about you. I realize we have alums on here. We may have students. We may have people going for internships or maybe job interviewing right away. There may be nurses and pharmacy students and people on rotation. So it's, it's probably a great deal of a mixed bag, and that's terrific. So let's take a look. We all have this common purpose, and we're going to take a look at what I call the question. So we're going to head to the next slide and just take a quick look at the question of the day. And it is this. So why don't you tell me about yourself? Now, sometimes this is disguised as, what's your background? Or what have you been doing? Or are you in school? Or where are you in your career? But it's really all the same. So it can go by a number of different names. And I should mention that for the first 20, 25 minutes or so, I'll be talking and sharing some tips and tools. And then I want to make sure I leave it a good amount of time so we can do some specific questions about your situations. So backing into this question again, I would like you to put in the chat simply, when someone says that to you, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? It could be a word, it could be an emotion. What's going on? If I say to you right now, people on the call, so why don't you tell me about yourself? You didn't know it was coming. What's your first reaction? And I'm not going to ask you to answer it. I just want to get some reactions. Okay, I don't know. It's honest. Education, I'm nervous. I don't know. I'm a student. I'm energetic. These are great. Oh my God, someone said, it's a test. It's a test, and I don't have the answer. My name, I'm a third-year student. Okay, somebody has in there. I start where I'm from. I'm a student. Knowledge and background, terrific, terrific. We have a lot of responses here. And you know what? They're all right. Everything is absolutely right, because there's no one way to do this. What often happens, I have found, when we look at this question, is that we hear some of the earlier stuff that went on that I'm not really sure, I don't have my thoughts together. What do they want to hear? Too long, too short? What do I leave in? What do we take out? And it begins to become this big thing in our minds. And what I want to say, in addition to all the other things, it is a huge opportunity, a huge opportunity. Someone is asking you to tell them a little bit about you. And you have absolute control of how you present this, of how you share it, of what your objective is. So I would like to plant that thought that it really is an opportunity to get the word out about who you are. So let's take a look at the next slide, because this is what I often experience when it's like alert, 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 I don't know where to go with this, I'm beginning to feel nervous, or I have it down, I know what I want to say, but maybe I've been saying the same thing over and over. So maybe I want to do something a little different, because I think often we sort of default to my name, my job, my organization. I'm Trisha Griffin-Carty. I'm the founder of Griffin-Carty Communications, a communications consulting firm. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a graduate of, I'm a pharmacist. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's hit the next slide. But we can get beyond the basics. All these rocks represent the basics, because they are different for everybody on the call. Someone put down, I start with where I come from, or maybe I speak a couple of languages, or I usually start with my name. So there are so many different pieces in here that is really valuable. And we can go beyond the name, the title, and the job and the organization. We can do skills, we can do experiences, we can offer an insight. All of these lead to a memorable impression. And that's what we're shooting for with this question. We can do the basics, but we want to go a little bit more because we want to be remembered. We want to stand out in a positive way. And I'm going to say right now, not in a bragging way. Absolutely not. I heard, as maybe you heard growing up, don't brag. It's not nice to brag. It's not good to brag. Don't do it. We don't need to do it. What we, instead of bragging, what we can do is own, O-W-N, own our experience and be comfortable in talking about it. And as I say that, I know that those two things often aren't readily accessible, to own it and to be comfortable. But that's what we're going to work on a little bit today. So for example, let's go to the next slide. And I don't know if you've seen these or you remember having these as children, but the kaleidoscope, this little boy is looking through. Let's start just with that for a moment. The kaleidoscope has a finite number of glass pieces in it, all different shapes and colors. But every time you turn it, you see a new pattern, and you can go on and on and on. This is my symbol for all of the things we own: skills, experiences, credentials, academics. And it's really about which ones we want to choose. What's the pattern that we want to work with? So when I think about this, the kaleidoscope, I put a question in, and this is one of the tools. What do you really do? What do you really do? Here's an example. I could say that, well, I coach people on presentations, or I help people go on interviews, something like that. Or even I help people tell stories on interviews. And there's nothing, again, wrong with that. But there is more. So contrast that, I help people present and presentation skills. What if I said, I help people deliver memorable messages in a confident manner? I help my clients deliver memorable messages or presentations in a confident manner. Versus I help people with presentation skills. What's the difference? What do you hear as the difference between the first one and what I'm saying for the second one? And if anybody wants to put something in the chat, that would be great. Or if you want to just volunteer a thought, that's great as well. Just unmute yourself.
One of your explanations is much more informative.
Informative. And it's not that many more words, is it? It's just going a little bit further. Somebody put down the second one is memorable. Marie said, Taryn said the second is more impactful. It's more sophisticated. Yeah, it is. It's a little more complete, I think. It's kind of like the rest of the story. So I'm going to have you do this in a minute. Be thinking about yourself, whatever your role is, because there's the what that we do something. The what is the task that we do. And many times when we're talking about tell me about yourself response, we go through the tasks. We go through the duties. So we want to expand on that. We want to go to the kaleidoscope and see a little bit more. And Shalini says, the second one makes me want to know more about you. Thank you. Yeah, you don't even know what, are you going to like me? You're not going to like me, but you're curious and you stand out in a positive way. So I'll give you a couple of examples that I've picked up from people to answer this question. Then I'm going to ask you to think about it and maybe put it in the chat. We'll see where it goes. So I asked someone in compliance, a chief of compliance officer in business, who said, what I really do is make sure that my organization stays in the right lane, gets everything, the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted in terms of all our legal requirements. I heard an attorney who helps people with wills and estates. I asked him this question, and he said, he could have said, I do wills and trusts and and filings and documents. But what he said was, I help my clients prepare for the future so they have peace of mind. Because they're thinking about, where's my money going to go, or my house, or whatever, when I pass on. And then I asked my hairstylist recently, and I said, Donna, you do such a great job. What would you say? What do you really do? I know you cut hair and you do all this. I said, what do you really do? And without hesitation, she said, oh, that's easy. I help my clients feel great about themselves. And I thought, wow. And that is how she lives. That is her philosophy. And that shows in her whole customer service orientation. So now, out of the blue, but I'm just going to ask you to play with it a little bit. Is there something you can say about yourself? Here's what I really do. How do I connect with people? Or how do I solve problems or whatever else, what do I really do beyond my job title? And you can shout out, or we can put it in the chat. And someone's making a commentary here, how and why, rather than what you do. Yes, it is more of that. It's not just reciting duties. It's throwing a little more how and why in there, which is kind of interesting. Okay, great. How about a couple other thoughts on that? What do you really do? Well, I'm going to pull in, I'm okay. I'm a person-centered educator and care provider. Now, I'm not really sure what that means, but I like it. And I would be tempted to say, tell me more about that. What does that mean to be a person-centered educator? So we have attracted attention because we got beyond the bullets on the resume and the bullets on job, title, and organization. Terrific. Okay. I was thinking about my colleague, Ann Chase, and how she is an advisor. And I'm sure if she listed her duties, it would be meetings and coaching and, giving information. But what I'm going to say this for Ann, and then Ann, you jump in anytime you want. But I would say that I think you make a difference in people's educational experience or post-education, working with alumni. I think you make a difference, in their next steps once they leave the university. So I don't know, Ann, does that sit with you okay?
Or sometimes I say I help people transform their lives.
I love it. I help people transform their lives. Now I'm going to come back to you. I won't today, but if you said that, I would say, tell me how. That's a big statement. How do you transform people? And I know you can back it up. So I see another one here. I'm a solutions-oriented detective. I love it. I want to know more. What does that mean? I meet new people and try to learn what motivates them. You're curious, you're interested, terrific. I help in providing better quality of life to people who need it. These are amazing. I help my patients see more clearly every day, from the optometrist on the call. I help people feel they're cared for and feel comfortable in times of hardship and sickness. And I don't even really know what your job titles are, except for the optometrist. So I hope we're getting to see here a little bit that we don't have to stick with just the bullets, but we can go a little further. It is absolutely truthful. It is absolutely honest. It's just a little more interesting. I help people be protected against disease. I work to eliminate health disparities. These are such interesting statements. And maybe you are saying them already on your Tell Me About Yourself. Maybe you're not. I would encourage you to write them down, to remember it. And as we get to the end, we'll find a way to weave that in. So it might not be the first thing that you say. You might say your name and your job title, and you say, this is the field I work in, but what I really do is that I help people stay protected from disease. That's interesting. That's memorable. You have my attention. You have the interviewer's attention, the networker's attention. Okay, great. Thank you for those examples. Those are terrific. Now, how do I do that? Let's look at another tool, a way of getting into jazzing up our Tell Me About Myself a little bit. And let's go to the next slide. And this is what I call the sweet spot. And it may actually be very connected to what you just did when you were talking about what you really do. Here's another way to get into it. Something that you enjoy doing and that you do well. You like it and you're good at it. That's your sweet spot. Now, it didn't say you're the world's greatest or that you've gotten awards or that you've been written up, in the Washington Post. I didn't say any of that. I just said, that you like it and that you do it well. So I'll ask you to think about what might be a sweet spot for you. For me, it is coaching people on presentations and on making the best impact they can make. I love doing it and I'm good at it. I have worked at it. So I'm not bragging when I say it. I work at it and I continue to work at it. But when I'm in that sweet spot, it's terrific. It's terrific. So I'm just wondering, could I get a couple more examples? I see publishing novels. Wow. Wow. See, I never think of that. Educating patients on how to live healthier lives. So I don't know what the job title is. It might be health educator, which sounds like I design workshops, but it said I'm educating patients. Do you see the result on how to live healthier lives? Listening to people, a highly overlooked skill. Listening to people when they have problems, listening to people when they're confused or when they need information, making patients feel that they are heard. How critical is that? How critical is that? Patients who might not be in the best frame of mind, a lot going on, and someone who gives them the gift of listening. Building relationships. Okay, all of these are terrific. Are they in your Tell Me About Yourself? I'm asking. And if not, let's see about a way to include them. So I'll throw in a couple of other things here. You could say, I'm really good at research. I'm really good at contributing to my field or mentoring others, staying current in my field, volunteering, problem solving. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that would be the sweet spot. And I'm betting that we could draw a line between the sweet spot and pieces maybe of what you really do. Sometimes there's a line, sometimes not so much, but they're both really important. Wow, I love this. Excellent listener. Listening, finding friends, inspiring. Friendly hand and ear to patients. Impact via communications. Yes, putting people at ease. These are benefit statements. This goes beyond, I design workshops and I coach people on presentations. That's what I do. If you have a pen or pencil, I would put in the word so that my patients feel at ease when I'm assisting them. So that I relate my experiences so that people will open up a little more and make this a better experience for them. So I think hopefully we can see where we're headed with all this. It's not a lot, but you would be surprised at how many of us don't do this. And again, I'm talking about, yeah, let's get in the other stuff, but then let's throw in some flavor. Let's throw in some colors in the kaleidoscope in those letters. Make this a little bit more interesting. Okay, we're going to take a look at the next slide. We're going to look at a process now. So this is kind of like my tip number 3. And it is something I developed a while back. Anticipate, prepare, and practice. And yes, the pun is there's an app for that. So anticipate, prepare, and practice. And 3-step process. You can use this on interviews, networking, internships, conversations, businesses. You go to a conference, you're a professional association. You do this ahead of time to work on that statement. So let's go to the first one, which is anticipate. The next slide. And what are we anticipating? Who is the audience? What is the situation? And what is your objective? And if you'll notice, 2 out of these 3 are all about them. It's not about me. It's not about you. So again, who's my audience? Is it, I'm applying to graduate school? Is it someone interviewing me? Is it someone I'm networking with? That they go together very carefully, the audience and the situation, the audience and situation. And then your objective, well, if it's an interview, it's to get to the next interview or, to get information, to inform or to persuade or to influence. But in our world, looking for jobs, it's really about to be memorable, to be memorable. So let's look quickly at the next slide. And it's just a different way of kind of thinking about this. Notice all the shoes. It's all about the audience. It's all about them. And I love this slide because there's sneakers and there's dress shoes and there's boots. No 2 people are the same. And you find out about the audience, the listener, the interviewer, by reading, what you can about the job, because that interviewer is very focused on getting that job filled. So that's where we're going to think. But now we're going to go a little bit deeper. And we're going to go to our next slide, which is prepare. And here's where it now becomes about us. Now it's about us a bit. We want to select pieces, maybe select pieces from the kaleidoscope, a skill, a quality, an experience, And then we want to make sure that that is of interest to the interviewer. That is of interest to the interviewer. So if I told you that I'm doing some sketching, this is something I started to do during COVID. I started just to sketch things freehand. I don't know how to draw. I don't know how to sketch, but I'm really enjoying it. That's probably not something that's going to impress somebody, when I'm in an interview. But if they asked me, what are the other things that you enjoy doing? I could slide it in there. But I would probably look for an example back to what is the job looking for and what do I have to offer? Let's align those. And then I might develop my statement a little bit further. So let's go a little bit further to the next slide. And they're all the same, but they're different. All the same, that they're different. These examples, these qualities, I need to be able to speak about them. So when people said, I put my patients at ease, I help them see clearly, I answer their questions, I'm a good listener. I might say, can you give me an example? Logical question. And then that's when you pull out what I call the mini story, So for my example, it might be something along the lines of, if I said that I coach people to be memorable and confident in their presentations, someone might say, well, that's nice. Now give me an example. And I'd say, well, actually, I was coaching a gentleman about a year or so ago. He had a lot to offer in his organization, but he wasn't speaking up at meetings at all. And his boss, terrific boss, saw his potential and realized that he was getting overlooked. People thought he had nothing to say, but she knew he did. He just wasn't saying it. So I worked with him for about a month or so. We did a lot of practice and we found ways for him to speak that were comfortable for him. For example, ask a question or make a comment on what somebody else said. Eventually getting to the point where he began to offer his own ideas. Well, long story short, once he began to do this, the people in these meetings saw him in a very different light. And his name was once again being talked about in terms of promotion. So that would be just a quick, it's not long, but just kind of a beginning, middle, and end, where I would back up the thing that I've said in my tell me about yourself. I've got an example that I can support it. It's not just my opinion. I have an example. So last but not least, let's go to the next slide and then we'll get to some questions. Practice, practice, practice. This is the piece that falls off the table. People will write things out and, read them. Take it out for a test drive, try out some of these statements, try talking about the sweet spot, try talking about what you really do. Come up with a little anecdote that supports either of those. Tell people and get some feedback and then just go revise and rinse and repeat and do it again. And I think one of the key things is that people will often say, I don't like to hear myself. I use my iPhone or whatever device you have to practice things that I'm going to say. If I have something new, I'll practice it in here in my voice notes, listen to it. And I do not like the way I sound. I have to get over it. We all have to get over it. I listen to what I'm saying. And if I say it 3 times and play it back, it gets better because I'll say, I don't need that word, or I'm not sure what I even meant there. So that's a safe way to do it if you just want to do it on your own. But I do encourage you, if you have a colleague or a friend, who may be also looking to work on this, that would be a great person to have in your court so you can get some real-time feedback. So take it out for a test drive, solicit some feedback, and then revise as it's necessary. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And then after this, I'm going to stop. When you say something out loud, it is different. It is different from putting it up here. When you say something out loud, it's out in the world and it has an impact. A couple of years ago, pre-COVID, I was going to do a talk in New Hampshire. I drove up there. I had a very busy week. It was a topic I knew really well. So I really didn't prepare for it very much. I didn't say it out loud. I had the slides. I knew I'd go here, 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 key points. So I'm sitting in the car. I have about half an hour before I go in. And I thought, well, I should say my intro out loud. So I did. It was terrible. I was all over the map. And the rest of it was fine, but I realized I hadn't said it out loud because this was a particular group, back to the audience. I knew what they were interested in. And I needed to have an opening that would reflect that. So in the 20 or so minutes I had left, I wrote some notes and I said it out loud. And then I went in and it was a much better presentation than if I hadn't done that. So I really encourage you to either use your phone, ask a colleague, because we experience things differently. So I'm going to stop here now, and I would love your questions. And if you're comfortable, I'd love to hear them live, or you can also put them in the chat, whichever you want to do. I've kind of talked about finding the sweet spot. What do you really do? Maybe coming up with a quick example to support either one of those. And it's all about getting beyond the basics. Do the basics and then give your interviewer more of the story, and the story is you. So I'm going to stop talking, and hopefully I'll have some questions. I would love to hear your questions, your comments, whatever comes to mind. So the floor is open.
Yes, so please unmute yourself and ask questions. This is the Q&A session.